Welcome to DeadManTalkings. Come with me as we step into the deep dark forest of fear. Let us pray we see sunrise in the morning. I hope you guys are ready for part 2 as much as I am from the wonderful WolfsCrown. As ever, please do let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share, it really does help with the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled The Reaper of the Accursed, Part 2. Let's get straight into that. Do not underestimate him, Hannah. The man stood up as he handed me small poisoned glass injections inside a paper bag, almost like a dart. He had a very sinister, intimidating and ominous presence. His blank bird mask along with his tall, massive figure made him a monster among men. Dark hair that would mix with his shadow, he wore long and thick dreadlocks that would reach half his back. He was standing outside a dark alley, near a busy place, radiating loud electronic music. If there is a single word that I would use to describe his image, it would be plain evil. That poison is slow. He spoke loud and clear. Make sure you hit at least 2 to speed up the effect. He paused. And when you are done, make sure you give him a proper burial by fire. The man stared at me. Even if I couldn't see his eyes, I could feel him staring through those dark holes in his mask. He was a man of dark skin and a very deep, penetrating voice. I have never worked with him before, but he knew my name, who my parents were, and other details of my life. He addressed me as daughter of, and my parents' name. This information I never give to anyone other than the government, and he does not hold such a high rank as far as I knew back then. This was before I came to this place, and we talked through the phone to meet up. I knew he worked with very dark magic, but not to what extent, and he wore the basic uniform of our organisation, and despite his characteristics and outstanding reputation of being a sadistic reaper, he was worried. His tone of voice said volumes on what he was thinking. In case you hit your partner, there are antidotes inside. Good fortune, he said as he left the alley, and his footsteps were faded by the loud music. All this time he was expecting it. He knew what had to be done. However, it does not mean he agreed with it. And very deep down I felt that he did not want me to obey my orders. At the time, I didn't pay much attention to it because this was not a usual contract. Our organisation was extremely secretive to the point where you barely knew who belonged to it. And there were special occasions, however, that demanded 2 teams working with each other. But even if we worked together, our identities were hidden since our uniforms covered our faces and body. We never shared personal information. We did not even have a headquarters. All communication was done by unknown numbers and special devices that could not be breached by normal means. Each member was given a different mask and codename. Mine was a blank fox mask, and my codename was Blur. The mask's only purpose was to obviously cover our faces, but they were also useful at intimidating people. Our uniforms were dark and varied between males and females. The female uniform consisted of a bulletproof vest underneath a long-sleeved dark hooded coat. We had to wear everything when we trained, but practically we only wore the vest and the mask along with some tactical clothing. The man with the bird mask wore his complete uniform. His codename was Bone Breaker. He had a necklace of small bones and wore several small pouches on his belt. Only difference between his uniform and mine was that the male uniform provided tactical gloves and boots, and ultimately, we were all given the mark of the organisation, a skull in the middle of a crucifix, which was the logo of the organisation, along a Greek letter. Of course, that is not enough to identify our kind, and we have a code sentence when dealing with clients or other members. It was also in Greek, but I really don't want to share it since the translation is not pretty. I don't know if they still follow the same regulations and traditions, but that is what we did not too long ago. We travelled in pairs, however, each time we had a different task, and there were Reapers, those who neutralize dangers of our society, and this includes people who are too dangerous for the government and for the people of power. It is a very broad parameter, but you get the idea. There are seekers, and those who are tasked to recover objects of power that are scattered around the world and have yet to be discovered or taken. There are also trackers, and those who specialize in patterns, statistics, and probability of a X thing being anywhere in the world. And the intelligence division specializes in understanding and translating the objects to know how to use them or destroy them. I used to be part of a Reaper division team. We are trained to localize, isolate, and neutralize. Another division would take care of the scene after our mission is reported as complete. I worked with Aisha, a pure-blooded lycanthrope. My stealth and her brutality granted us the highest recognition in the organization. We were only tasked missions of extreme importance. Aisha behaved like a woman of royalty. She had manners, was well-spoken in British English and Mandarin, and had the looks of a princess. Her codename was Hound, and she wore the mask of a jester devil. She never wore her uniform aside from formal meetings with our superiors. The reason is because she would always transform during our contracts, and she would then tear apart her clothing, so she had to wear simple clothes. We trained together, and one time our superior went nuts on her because she had destroyed her uniform for the 4th time during training. But again, what could they expect? They tried to make special gear, but their investments would always get destroyed since there was no material that could stretch after transformation. Aisha was married to a pure-blood lycanthrope too. They inbreed in order to keep the bloodline pure and under control, and they can transform whenever they want, and they can spend their whole life as a human without having a necessity to transform. I don't know how it works, but that is what Aisha told me once. You may be wondering how I could be talking about working with a werewolf so easily. As I wrote on my other entry, my brother was transformed into one when he was just 13. I was 6 at the time, and so I developed some type of tolerance and understanding when it came to the people that possessed that type of blood. I guess that was the reason why they paired me up with her. Anyways, I got way off tangent. The person we were tasked to neutralize was a former Reaper of the organization that deserted without authorization. Trackers kept a very close eye on him and noticed that he had been taking contracts around the country, only monster contracts of high mortality and skill level. His actions were becoming notorious as he never left any survivors/witnesses in his encounters. He never cleaned his mess and was becoming a nuisance to the higher-ups. His lack of discipline and brutality in his contracts gave me the impression that he did not care about the lives of others, and that he had lost his humanity and was lost in this world without any purpose. Aisha looked at his records. He was a young man with long dark hair. His face was covered by a horrific wolf mask. He had a casualty count of approximately 132 cryptids in a time period of 4 years. He earned the codename Nightmare. We knew he was familiar with dark sorcery and possessed a practical arsenal, and was an expert in concealment and tracking. He proved to be a danger to everyone around him, thus he had to be neutralized. His partner, the Bone Breaker, had also mentioned he had a familiar, a big wolf as dark as the night and as fierce as a lion. I wasn't too familiar, pun not intended, with that type of magic, but Aisha was. She explained that they are spirit animals, and they are loyal and as dangerous as you want them to be. Usually, those who possess them chose to have owls, cats, spiders, small dogs or even snakes. Although they are spirits, they physically manifest in our world and can cause harm if their masters were to be harmed. Thus, we had to take precautions to avoid such beasts. Aisha was the bait. We contacted an old alchemist that could ask for the bounty hunter's help in dealing with a special assignment. The target had been travelling by motorcycle in a linear direction between cities and states. He would reach a destination that would catch his attention due to the sorcerer asking for a head of a pure-blood lycanthrope. A sum of $20,000 was to be awarded to him after he finished the job. and to justify the sum, he would have told the details of how rare and important a pureblood werewolf is. After all, her transformation was a pure white werewolf with bright blue eyes. Aisha would be prepared in advance, and of course, she would be expecting him. I was to rush in and shoot the poison at him to guarantee his death, but we were not taking any chances. Aisha's husband was on his way to our destination from his work. He would arrive and patrol around the area in case he tried to escape, or any other hunter would unfortunately show up. It was a great trap, a great plan that he should not have escaped in one piece. We are great at covering our tracks, and thus the police and other landowners would never notice what happened. It was all a setup anyway. We chose a 2-floored fancy house outside the city on private land. Aisha was to wait for him at night after the full moon. The reason is because the hunter did not know that pureblood lycanthropes are able to control their transformation, and he would assume that they can only transform at the full moon. The contract demanded the tail, head and heart, and so he had to wait for the right time. I would hide outside the house perimeters and wait for him to enter the house. I remember I climbed a tree and could barely see the entrance, but I did not want to take the risk of him spotting my presence or opportunity for his familiar to spot me, and thus I covered my scent with some fragrance, let's say. Ground zero was the house, and we had to contain him in there to avoid the werewolf howls reaching the city or other landowners around the area. The plan was that, after the bounty hunter entered the house, I would rush in to aid Aisha if she had not killed him yet. Her husband would then contain our encounter and eliminate anyone who gets inside the land to leave no witnesses. In case he escaped, he would take on tracking his scent and catch up to him. The priority mission was for me to use the poison, and since the poison has enzymes that would vanish the human body, I have never seen the poison in action, but it is a very painful death. The body would go from a solid form to just flesh and blood in a matter of an hour. Our scientists also managed to make the poison alter the recipient's DNA so it would get unrecognizable, but that is just what they say. I waited outside the house on top of a tree branch and took off my shoes to not make any noise when I had to go inside the house. I knew Aisha would send me a text if the hunter entered the house without me noticing, and so I also had my phone next to me. Full moon was visible and the minutes were passing by. I was getting cold, but my heart was pounding as I remembered the words to not underestimate him. I saw 3 leaves falling in front of me as the screen of my phone turned bright. He's infiltrated the house, not a sound as we expected. I dropped from the tree and made my way to Aisha. I heard a couple of gunshots, but they were not loud. I had a small backpack with nothing but a gun that I would use to fire the poison and the antidotes. I always carried 2 silver daggers on my belt for close combat, and because it was practical. Once I got near the entrance, I saw a peculiar sight on the ground. It was a blood ritual with a disgusting incense smell. I stepped on it and covered it with dirt without giving it much more thought. And there was blood in it and old yellow bones, as if it was some sort of summoning. I heard gunshots and stuff breaking inside the house upstairs. I opened the door and very gently to not alert him and saw the living room was a mess. The sofas were torn and there were a lot of broken glass and furniture on the ground. Werewolf claw marks along with gunshots and some blood were decorating the walls of both the first and second floor. The balcony in the second floor was destroyed and the stairs had holes in some of the steps. Heavy pounding and noises were coming out of the big room upstairs, so I loaded the gun with 1 poison injection and entered the room. The hunter was agitated with 1 silver axe in his hand and his left shoulder completely bloody. Aisha had done damage to his left arm, but he still looked intact and with enough energy to continue. When I stepped in, another figure emerged from the ceiling duct, something slimy that could materialize in between the metal bars. A small pale figure with multiple limbs, large, wide insect eyes, possessing the small mouth of an infant with dry lips. It was looking at me with an indifferent expression. The hunter was attacked by Aisha. Her white pelt was covered in blood of her own. Never had I seen her so frustrated. It had to have been around 6 minutes at the time I finally got to the room, and she still had not finished him. I tried firing the poison, but I barely missed him since the slime-pale monster attacked me and grabbed my leg. I kicked it in the face, but its arms enlarged and were flapping around trying to hit everything in its range. I was struggling with the monster. I was not prepared to encounter such an abomination. It was not in the description, nor in his files. Confusion and panic clouded my mind, making me a little agitated. Aisha threw the guy to the wall next to me, and I rushed with a knife to finish the job by stabbing his chest. He dodged my attack by ducking and punched my gut. I grabbed a chain in his neck and tore an amulet that was close to it when he pushed me away. Aisha had been fighting and tearing apart the pale creature and managed to throw it to the other side of the room while also breaking one of its arms. The hunter grabbed his gun on the floor and aimed at me, and the werewolf in its mighty speed rushed towards him, pushing him away towards the outside of the room. Why was she not killing him? Why does she insist on just playing with him? She had a big ego, but I always told her not to endanger the mission, nor herself. And she had a pleasure playing with her prey, and that's why she was given the Jester Devil mask. But I was confident she was going to finish the job. She began to growl, and it was terrifying to hear that sound. I heard how they fell from the balcony while the pale creature was still trying to grab me with its other arm. I broke the window, jumped out from the second floor. I heard gunshots as I made my way through the dumpsters. I heard a loud angry howl coming from inside the house. I ran as fast as I could. The creature was chasing me within the forest, merging with the darkness of the land. I saw only the glow of its pale skin. I reloaded my gun with another poison and turned to shoot it. The monster fell onto the ground, but it was still moving. I set down my backpack to dodge in case it started attacking. It stood up and flapped its arm towards me with insane speed and reach. It managed to grab my leg, making me fall, and it began dragging me towards it. And by the time I was next to it, the poison had already immobilized the creature. The skin was melting, and the creature's scream of pain was filling the forest with fear. It sounded human, like an old man. I crawled back to one of the trees and looked at the hunter's amulet. It was a cross. I thought it was ironic how a man like him considered himself to be a Christian after all he had done, and even seen. I have never given it much thought. Was there a God after all we have seen and done? I was resting, lost in my head. My heartbeat really was agitated after all that had happened. I noticed how the creature left the red mark of its hand where it grabbed me. I still felt its cold touch. I walked up to my car outside the land. It wasn't that far. It was probably a 7-minute walk before I got inside in order to leave the area. And by this time, Aisha had to be done with him. I had already left her with her husband in my thoughts. The forest was silent, dark, and very cloudy. Minutes passed and I was driving on the road. Looking into the rear mirror, I saw a bright light in the distance, getting brighter and brighter. I was getting closer and closer, and the sound of a motorcycle going at full speed. I lowered the window and heard the growl of a monster, a werewolf to be specific. A bullet went through the back windshield, which forced me to turn to the forest and drive at full speed through the trees and darkness. Not a good idea, but I began to panic. I turned off the car lights and really tried to lose whoever was shooting at me. I abandoned the vehicle after another bullet hit the tyre. I took some of my tools and I was away with my backpack. I still had no shoes and the branches were really hurting my feet as I ran. It began raining lightly and I began hearing loud thunderous growls behind me. I slid on one turn and began reloading the gun as I pointed at the motorcyclist. But I was waiting for a clear shot due to the light blinding me. I used a smoke grenade that I had in my bag to also blind him or her. An arrow was shot, hitting the tree behind me before the smoke covered the area. I hid and crouched behind the tree and pointed towards the direction of the dim light. I heard heavy pounding on the ground, but the rain really covered majority of the sounds. The motorcycle was thrown by an incredible force of the monster. As the smoke was clearing, as I saw the dark pelt werewolf, I was sure it was Aisha's husband. I heard another low growl, but it was not a werewolf. Off to the dark corner of my vision, a figure of a giant wolf jumped on top of the lycanthrope and held it to its arm. I saw then a humanoid figure standing, and I shot it. However, the werewolf got in the way with its dashing speed, and I hit the back of its head. The smoke was beginning to clear out, and only then I saw the hunter. He threw himself to the ground, trying to dodge the claws of the werewolf. He got a heavy scratch on his back as he tried to get away from the beast's claws. The wolf let go of the beast and went to defend the hunter, making the werewolf hesitate and take his distance to make a final attack. Everything happened so fast. I barely had time to react. The poison was taking effect on Aisha's husband, making the werewolf look around with its desperate eyes for help because it was making him weaker and paralysing his muscles from the inside. The lycanthrope leaped into the air to land its final blow, and it was all or nothing. But the hunter immediately shot down by 6 gunshots that landed in its chest. Silver. It was settled. The werewolf landed close to him, weakened and in pain, trying to stand the predator back up again to avenge his wife. As the hunter stood back up, Aisha's husband roared at him with such fury that it mixed with the thunderous sound of a storm, only for his voice to be cut by a silver axe going through half its head. My heart felt heavy. I knew Aisha's husband, and we talked occasionally whenever I would get invited to their house during the holidays. He had a lot of pride whenever he would talk about his blood, and if he was to die, he said, it would be by the hands of his wife, and he would joke about. The hunter was already weak and could barely move. He gave the wolf a hand signal, and the familiar went chasing after something towards the rest of the dark forest. Probably looking for me, I thought. The rain was heavier now. I took the opportunity and grabbed the last poisoned injection and rushed towards the hunter to shove it inside his skin. I hated him. I despised him. He was a monster that did not deserve to live. He stood up after he saw me, and he was drenched in water and blood. His jacket was torn by claw marks, and his posture showed that he was heavily injured. He had dark clothing aside from his mask that was a dark shade of white. It was the most horrific mask that I had ever seen. It was the mask of a smiling skull of a wolf, playing with the horns of a demon. His eyes were obscure, but his hand was firm and determined to kill. I caught him off guard, but he still managed to stop my hand before I got the chance to stab his neck. He had no force left to stop me with his arms. However, this is where I made my mistake. I underestimated him. We underestimated him. I could only imagine if Aisha also had the same thought just now, and what he did make her realize, we didn't stand a chance against him. I did not expect he was crazy enough to bite the poison injection, shattering it into pieces of glass that fell from his mouth down to my feet. His mask was able to separate, revealing his mouth, which allowed him to bite the flask, a small detail that took me by surprise. I was shocked. He threw me off my game and proceeded to kick me in the guts with the energy he had left, and then landed a heavy punch on my face, breaking the lower part of my mask. Even though he did not hit me hard enough to knock me out, I was extremely tired and not in a mental state to keep fighting. Tiny drops of water began to hit my face and lips. I only saw the darkness of the forest as I lied down in the sharp ground, thinking that Aisha was probably dead. My thoughts were interrupted as I was brought back to reality when the hunter launched on top of me and forcibly opened my mouth to pass the poison he was holding in his mouth. His lips touched mine as I realized the poison was getting inside my system. I kicked him off of me. I tried to spit the sour liquid and quickly reached my bag to get the cure and drank it to annihilate the virus. After I had finished, the hunter crushed my other hand with his boot and quickly grabbed my bag to chug one of the spare antidotes. He went back to the remains of the werewolf to retrieve the axe from its skull. The pelt of the werewolf was already melting and began to smell. He took a glance at the remains and then went to his motorcycle to retrieve the head of a white werewolf and then threw it in front of me. "Any more surprises?" he said. The rain was hitting me like little stones. I was crying in panic and sorrow. This was the first time I felt so fucking worthless. Seeing Aisha destroyed my soul. I really cared for her. She had been my only friend. I loved her like a sister. And now she was gone. Gone! Because of my utter incompetence. Writing about this even makes my heart shatter into pieces. I wonder if she is in heaven. I wonder if she is mad at me. Poor sounds were coming from the east. The dark wolf emerged with the body of a pale beast that was already rotten and missing several limbs. It was just skin at the stage of the poison. I let go of it and went to the side of the hunter, who in turn put his hand and petted the wolf. The wolf stood along with him, as dark as the night. It growled at me, showing its sharp teeth stained by blood. I felt it was challenging me. It was telling me to stand up.
"This is it. It's you or me,"
he said. He sounded very tranquil. It could have been because he was really weak already and about to collapse, just like me. I grabbed my knives and launched at him with all my energy and hatred. I stabbed his arm once, and as he grabbed one of the knives along with my other hand, I went for the final blow, but he stopped the knife by grabbing its sharp end. He headbutted me once to the ground, and I was defeated. I couldn't move. He let out a heavy cough and went down to his knees. I heard the wolf coming closer to his master, letting out a gentle whimper. I don't know how much time had passed. I don't think I drank enough antidote, for I felt paralyzed. I saw the hunter once more, and he was looking down at my neck and then tore away the necklace I took from him at the house.
"Before I leave, I want you to know your name."
He stared at me. The demonic mask was penetrating my soul, and this felt like the end. How was he going to do it? A bullet? A knife? Was I going to be torn away by his familiar? Torture? We are killers. We are nothing but killers. But his question, it reminded me that I had a family, that I was given a name, that I was someone at some point, and that I was a friend and a sister. "Why?" I replied with almost no energy left. I did not understand why he was asking me that. He was going to kill me anyways. What good is it to waste my last breath, I thought.
"This was fun, and you almost killed me, Reaper."
He tried to laugh, but I could see how red-tinted drops of rain were falling from his chin. His eyes, I saw them. They were peculiar and a clear shade of grey. He crouched, leaning closer towards me, waiting for my reply. "Hannah, I'm 18. I coughed. I was feeling cold.
This was a setup, right?"
He asked in a very low tone of voice, almost like he was disappointed. "Yes," I murmured. I began crying because I could not move anymore. I couldn't feel my body. It felt really heavy. The raindrops were hitting my eyes, causing me to close them frequently. I did not want to see the ugly darkness. I wanted to see colours, light, life. I wanted to live. I felt so sorry for Aisha, for abandoning her, for not saving her husband, for failing my brother, for failing my mission. But we knew this could happen anywhere, at any time. It was only a matter of time.
"Tell the Overlord, the next Reaper I see on my ass. If I manage to survive another time, God help me, I will hunt him down myself. Deliver the message for me, Hannah."
He walked back, leaving my line of sight as my vision became blurry. The last thing I saw was the wolf's face tilting towards me as everything faded to black. When I woke up, I was inside the house. It was still a mess, but I was covered by bed sheets and was wearing different dry clothes. A note was left on the wall, and it was being held by one of my knives. I still have the note, and it reads,
"Stay with the shadows, Reaper. I'm sorry it had to come to this. Nothing personal."
I checked my backpack, and everything was there except for one of my knives. I cried a lot that dawn. I lost my best friend, and it was my fault. I wanted to hate him, but he let me live. Why? Why would he let me live? I tried to kill him. He showed no mercy to the others, but why me? Why forgive our organization? What are his goals? I let hours pass by before there was a sudden realization. Why was I not in pain? Why did I feel rested? How much time had it passed before I woke up? I did not have my phone on me. Probably I left it in the car due to the panic. I rushed in confusion to my car and saw that it was in an inadequate state. I called for backup. It took only hours before a specialist team came to rescue me and took care of the scene. It surprised me and angered me how the reply to Aisha's death was just a "Unfortunate. Please report back to the next facility to redirect you to your new teammate," or something along the lines of that. All I said was, "Yes, sir." I had to swallow my anger. Who was this hunter? Were they going to let him go just like that? I told the specialist leader everything I just wrote here, but that was the end. If you are confused, then at the time it would have been both you and me. But I was not going to let him go. I at least wanted to know why he spared me. Why did he abandon the organization? I might have hated him so much, but I would honor his mercy and not try anything against him. After the incident, I tracked him down again with the help of the Bone Breaker, but not to kill him. I finally reached him and had the chance to have a long talk. He showed me his face. He was not wearing his uniform. We met up at a very cheap apartment 4 cities away from our last encounter. He had trouble walking, and it looked like he could not move his left arm since it was held down by an arm sling. Nevertheless, I did not think he was that young. For a guy his age, he had the body of a man with several scars on his body, which I could see because he was not wearing a shirt. His eyes, a clear shade of grey, were lifeless and sharp. We both were seated away from each other, holding a gun pointed towards one another in case anything funny happened. It felt tense, and yes, we talked for hours while pointing our weapons to one another. Interesting enough, he was holding a crossbow. He mocked my choice of arms, but I am not going to go into detail about our conversation, because I would drag this longer than it already has. His familiar was not with him. I could have easily shot him down, but I couldn't. After I tried to kill him, he still managed to forgive me and show me the mercy I was not going to grant him. Out of my own pride and beliefs, I had to honor it. A lot of time has passed since that incident. Years. I can say for sure that regardless if we had killed him that night, we would have died in another contract anyway. This is our fate, and the organization was only exploiting our curse. 1 month later, I formally left the organization and have dedicated myself to work alone. Once in a while, the hunter and I have worked together for a common goal. There is so much I could tell you about this man, about what we have seen together, about the lies and the fairy tales. But those are stories for another day, don't you think? Wow. Absolutely awesome stuff there by the fantastic author by the name WolfsCrown. Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to make a narration of your wonderful work again. And thank you for giving me the heads up on that last night when you first posted it to your Reddit. Guys and girls, you know the drill. As ever, please do let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. If you believe you can pen the next masterpiece of the show, please do get that over to myself on the website, which is www.DMTForestToFear.com, and head over to the submit story or report page. I look forward to hearing from you. Got some brand new Hostile Intent on the way for you tomorrow night, guys, so look forward to that. And above all, I hope you're well and happy. And remember, be safe, not sorry.